he has won Super Bowl, but think about how we even talk about Russ in the Super Bowl. You're like, oh, it wasn't Russ. He's just along for the ride. People say, oh, no, it was Elijah Boone. It was that defense. It was that run game. It wasn't Russ. Pete Carroll. It wasn't any. And they do it. The way people talk about Russ, I don't understand why he's never gotten the respect that I think he deserves. That said, he is not at the same level of a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, we've discussed how he has failed to get them to a Super Bowl and how, he came up small against Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers in the playoffs this past season. But when we talk about Aaron, Stephen A. says it. He's a bad man. There's a reason, because he's one of the best shows on the football field. We don't look at Russ the same way, and I think going to Denver, that was a move where this is a team that said, you know what, we are a quarterback away. Russ, we want you. You're the thing. You're the magic elixir that's going to make us better. You're the person that's going to take us over the top. Think about how we looked at the Denver Broncos last year with Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater. This is a different day in Denver, and it's because Russell is there. I think if he is able to win a Super Bowl there, it changes everything as far as how we look at him versus Aaron, which we already know he's a bad man.
Boy, I hate to disagree with my buddy Kimberly Martin here, but I'm going to
do
go.
It then.
Listen, I know she
it.
talked about how my face was beat and everything, but
Your face
listen, I'm
beat,
going to go with Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers here, and the reason why, yes, we on the show we talk about Aaron Rodgers, how he's a bad man all the time. There's no question about his arm talent and his ability. But when we talk about Aaron Rodgers, we also talk about his legacy, right? And this is the same guy, the four-time league MVP that hasn't appeared in the Super Bowl since 2010. Okay, and also think about this when we talk about Aaron Rodgers. Since Matt LaFleur has been the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, their defense has actually been ranked in the top 10 during that whole time period. So we're thinking about Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. They've hosted the NFC Championship game in back-to-back years and been eliminated both times. And we saw this past year Aaron Rodgers not play a good game against the Los Angeles Rams up in Lambeau Field. So when I look at Aaron Rodgers, as great as he is, as talented as his arm talent is, there's levels to legacy, okay? We know Aaron Rodgers is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I get that. But inside of Canton, you ask anybody as it relates to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, there are different rooms in Canton. And if Aaron Rodgers want to be in that elite room with the Tom Brady's or the Peyton Mannings of that sort, he has to get another championship. You sign another blockbuster deal to stay with the Green Bay Packers. I don't want to hear any other excuse from Aaron Rodgers. I don't want to hear anything. It has to be Super Bowl or nothing. It's got to be Super Bowl or bust with Aaron Rodgers, because from this point forward, that's all people are going to care about as it relates to Aaron Rodgers. It's all about his legacy.
Right.
He has to get more than one Super Bowl in order to elevate that to the next step, where we're talking about maybe putting him in that same room with Tom Brady and company.
Let me get in here for 1 second, because I think you both make phenomenal points. And I love what you said about Russ, because I think Russ doesn't get the respect. I think you're absolutely right. Who do they talk about? They talk about beast mode. They talk about the Legion of Boom. They talk about Pete Carroll. Even now, people are still doubting him. And then where I go to you, Woody, which I think is also interesting, is almost the conversation. People are going to get mad at me for putting Harden and Rodgers in the same sentence. But what I just talked about with Big Perk and James Harden, right? He does it in the regular season. We haven't seen it in the playoffs. And for Aaron Rodgers, we haven't seen it in 10 years. So like you're saying, what is he right now? One of the greatest regular season quarterbacks ever, the most talented. But he needs to get it done in the postseason. But one thing I want to go back to you, Damian, here, to Kimberly's point, is do you think, we know Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Famer, right? Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Famer regardless. But is Russ? Is Russ a Hall of Fame right now? But if he gets a second ring, he would be.
I tend to think that Russ is a Hall of Famer right now. I think Russ has done a phenomenal job. I think Russ is a 9-time Pro Bowler up in Seattle. But here's what I will admit. I will admit that, the early part of Russ's career, the Legion of Boom played a huge portion. In that first Super Bowl, was obviously, we talk about the defense, but I do think along the lines of, Russell's career in Seattle, Russell has really put that franchise on his back, over the last few years and really kept this team competitive and trying to be in the Super Bowl conversation. I just look at Aaron, when I make the case of Aaron Rodgers, it's on a totally different level. I'm just talking just pure legacy, the best of the best of quarterbacks that we've ever seen play this game. And for a guy who's won four MVPs in the National Football League and only to have won one Super Bowl, I think if he wants to get to that next level, he needs to win another Super Bowl. And I think it's just two different conversations that we're having between Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers in this situation.
Yeah, to me, the pressure, I think you're talking about pressure and you're talking about legacy together. Like last year, there was a lot, it was Super Bowl or bust for Green Bay last year. But obviously they fell short of that. We don't look at Aaron Rodgers any differently. We still come into the season like, oh, okay, yeah, he's one of the favorites to win the MVP. He's one of the favorites. The Packers are a favorite to be in the playoffs and be a Super Bowl contender. I just don't see the way we look at Aaron changing necessarily. Like, yes, he will get another Super Bowl. Yes, Aaron, now he's out of the pack that just has one. He's elevated. But even if he ends his career with one, Aaron Rodgers still goes out as one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. That does not change. To me, when we talk about Russell, another Super Bowl completely changes the narrative on Russell Wilson being a guy who goes to a new team and tries to pull off the Tom Brady. Like, oh, now it's about me. You want to say the last Super Bowl wasn't about me? Well, check this out. I came here and I changed this franchise. And now we're going to win it because of me. Like, that's a completely different situation.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.